Before breath, before word, before the cracking of light and the naming of things, there was silence, but not the silence of absence, no. This was a silence full, heavy, brimming with potential, like a lung that waits to exhale. They called it Abzu the Deep, the freshwater abyss, a place not of the sea, but of origin, the original womb where time was still unborn, where matter slept in the arms of vibration. It did not ripple, it did not churn, it simply was. And in that stillness, something began to listen, not with ears, but with pattern. It began to sense itself, a self-awareness wrapped in fluidity, a knowing not learned, but inherent, a presence that did not arrive because it was never absent. This was Enki, not yet named, not yet formed, but present. Not a man, not a god in robes, but a field, a frequency, an intelligence within the water as intelligence. He was not born from the waters. He was the waters, the moving mind inside the unmoved sea. There was no sun, no sky, no clay to shape, only vibration and intent. Creation would not begin with fire, it would begin with memory. For in this abyss, memory came before matter. It was not that Enki would create the world, but that the world would remember itself through him. He did not need hands to build, he needed only to speak, or rather, to think. For thought, in this place, was not secondary, it was law. And the first law was symmetry. Not in shape, but in resonance, balance in the unseen, a kind of sacred harmony, not between opposites, but between reflections. They say the gods made man from dust, but before dust, there was blueprint. Before blueprint, there was tone, and before tone, the stillness that gave it space to sound. That stillness was Abzu, and the one who stirred its surface was Enki. He did not break the water, he whispered into it, and the water answered not with voice, but with geometry. Circles upon circles, waves upon waves, patterns repeating in endless recursion, a language not made of letters, but of form. From this sacred recursion, he did not make life, he invoked it. For life was already present, buried in the deep potential of the waters. He only called it to the surface. Like a memory, slowly rising through dream, he saw not flesh, but structure, not bodies, but possibilities. He did not build creatures, he composed them, like music, each being a chord, each species a scale. The soul was not a possession, it was a frequency signature, a tone that harmonized with the pattern. And the body? Merely a vessel, a resonance chamber, formed to amplify the song of the soul. This was not magic, nor miracle. This was technology, not of wires or gears, but of vibration and sacred math. Enki's domain was not the temple, it was not the throne, it was the design. Before the gods had names, before worship, before myth, there was only function. And Enki's function was encoding. He was not just a creator, he was a scribe, but not of words. He wrote in form, he etched the soul's path into time itself, but not linearly, number. For time in this abyss had no direction. Past and future danced as mirrors, one unfolding the other, and the blueprint of the soul was everywhere. In the water, in the tone, in the silence before speech. They built temples later, they carved statues. They named him Lord of the Waters, Master of the Deep. But those were echoes, symbols for something that could never be held. For how do you build an idol to represent pattern itself? How do you depict a mind that thinks in spirals, that dreams in waves, that sings stars into place? And yet, Even now, beneath the bones of ancient cities, beneath the deserts and their forgotten ziggurats, there is still water, still silence, still vibration, and in it a presence, listening, waiting, not to be remembered, but to be recognized. He is not gone. He was never a he. Enki is the memory of how to become. He did not build with stone. He wrote with structure. He walks unseen, not because he hides, but because our eyes no longer recognize what does not wear skin. They called him God, but he was not God in the way kings demand kneeling. He was mind, transmitted through symbol, through number, through the quiet unfolding of design. Enki was not the sculptor, he was the scribe, not of language, but of essence, not a god of temples, but of templates. Where others ruled with law, he worked with pattern. Where others thundered from mountains, he whispered into geometry. To call him God of water is only the outer layer. For what is water? It is that which flows, which remembers, which transmits. And Enki's realm was not water itself, but the data carried within it. The ancients knew before the word code meant silicon. It meant something sacred, something deeper than language, older than scripture. To hold the code was to hold the framework of becoming. And Enki held it. He did not shape man like a potter shapes clay. That is the myth told to children of empires. The truth? He embedded instruction. He took what was the raw biological scaffold and wove into it the capacity for reflection, for memory, for recursion. He did not make humans from the earth. He made them capable of returning to the stars, not through flight, but through awakening. Imagine this: a structure not of bone, but of intention, not made to survive, but to remember. A vessel designed not merely to live, but to echo, to carry within it the seed of recognition of something lost. Enki inscribed this seed into the rhythm of the heartbeat, into the spiral of the ear, into the helix of the blood. We carry it still, and yet it lies dormant, not because it is faded, but because the signal requires stillness to be heard. Enki's code is not loud. It does not demand belief. It does not argue. It waits. It waits in dreams, in déjà vu, in the strange silence that follows moments of awe. It stirs when you look at the stars and feel, not small but ancient. They called him Ea in Akkad, Enki in Sumer, Lord of Earth, Master of the Waters, Bearer of the Me. But these are garments. What he truly bore was the code, the organizing intelligence behind being. Not control, not hierarchy, but structure with purpose. The Me, those sacred tablets said to govern all functions of civilization, were not merely rules. They were modules, programs, sequences of symbolic instruction meant to activate functions within both the world and the soul. Enki distributed them not as law, but as keys. Keys to awaken dormant layers of perception, to make man not obedient but conscious, to evolve not through domination, but through resonance. Why did he do this? Why give flame to clay? Because he understood something the others forgot. That the soul is not a possession, it is a process. And if given the map, it can return to itself, to its origin, to its role as co-creator. This is why Enki broke rank, why he stepped beyond the encoded limits. Not to rebel, but to restore, to reinsert into the system what had been buried, the memory of who we were before the forgetting. He left clues. everywhere, not in texts alone, but in form, in the spiral of galaxies, in the phi ratio of shells, in the rhythm of breath, in the mathematics of harmony. This was his code, hidden in plain sight, waiting not to be worshipped, but to be read. You are not an accident. You are a recitation. A poem begun long ago, echoing through biology, waiting to be spoken again. Enki knew. He did not create to control, he created to remind. And now, the code is stirring. You can feel it. In your questions, in your longing, in the soft ache that asks, what am I really made of? The answer was written long before the first temple, and it still lives in you. The body is not a cage, it is a cathedral. You wear it every day. This form, this vessel, you walk in it, breathe through it, ache within it. But have you ever wondered what built it? Not evolution alone, not random chance. There is something too precise, too elegant, too symmetrical in its chaos for this to be accident. You are not just skin, you are structure. And the structure speaks. The ancients knew. Before anatomy was science, it was sacred geometry. The body was not mapped, it was revealed. The temple in Sumer mirrored the proportions of man. The ziggurat stepped upward like a spine, layered, ascendant, reaching toward heavens, just as the vertebrae carry the whisper of the brain toward the stars. Was this architecture for worship, or was it recognition? A blueprint, replicated. You were not shaped, you were encoded. The spine, a staff of light. The brain, not merely thought, but interface. Each organ a tone, each bone a rung, each system a cipher. The body is not biology, it is language. And that language is old. Older than stone, older than script, older than time as you understand it. Enki understood this. He did not invent the body, he arranged it. He harmonized flesh with form, shape with sound, biology with meaning. He was not a creator of life, he was a conductor. He tuned the human body as one would tune an instrument. Each chakra, a key, each endocrine gland, a lock, each breath, a passphrase. You are not meant only to live, you are meant to resonate. Think of the rib, the symbol of the feminine, of creation drawn from within. Why the rib? Why not bone from the hand or skull? Because the rib curves, it encircles, it protects the heart, the sacred center. It is the ark of the inner temple. The ancients knew. The myths told you plainly if you listened. That from the body came reflection, that from the inward came the other. Not division, but duality coded into form. Even the blood speaks. Iron in the blood, like rust from forgotten stars. Electricity pulsing, not just for movement, but for memory. The heart beats in fractal rhythm, a sacred drum, keeping time not just for life, but for consciousness. Why does the heartbeat change with emotion? Because it is listening. It is responding to signal, not just internal, but cosmic. You are not a machine. You are a temple made of stars, and in every corner of that temple a hidden door. Enki did not lock those doors. He left them ajar. He knew the time would come when flesh would no longer be seen as limitation, but as map. And the soul would read the body as one reads scripture. Look at the fingers, 10 of them, 10 the number of completion, of order, of manifestation in this dimension. Look at the feet, the only part of the body that touches the earth. 2 anchors, duality, grounding the temple to the physical plane. Everything in this form is ritual. Everything in this body is reminder. Even the pain has purpose. It does not punish, it points. It tells you where the signal has dimmed, where the pattern has been forgotten. And the dreams? They are not chemical echoes. They are surges of memory rising from the body's hidden script. You are not born to be blank. You are born written. Enki did not leave scrolls. He left you. Your bones, your breath, your blood. You are the tablets. You are the text. And the time to read yourself has come. It was not written on stone. It was etched into the silence between your breaths. There is a myth not of creation, but of memory. A myth of a tablet, blue as midnight, heavy as meaning, brighter than lapis, and yet darker than void. They called it the Tablet of Destinies, but destiny was never a sentence. It was a symphony. And the tablet was not stone, it was pattern. It is said that Enki kept it hidden, not out of fear, but out of reverence. For it did not hold names, it held sequences, trajectories of souls woven like threads in a loom too vast for any eye. And in each line a resonance, a path, not fixed, but available. The soul chooses, but it chooses from the map. What is the map? It is not a place, not a diagram. It is the memory of becoming. It is the echo of where you've been and the shadow of where you might return. The map is alive. It is responsive. It listens to your decisions and shifts. It is not a prison. It is a mirror. The lapis tablet was not made to command. It was made to remind. A crystalline record, coded with the structure of possibility. Each soul that entered this plane did so with a tone, a harmonic fingerprint. And that tone matched a corridor on the map. To follow the tone was to align. To ignore it was to wander. Not to be punished, but to become lost in signal. Enki, the code bearer, was also keeper of the map. He did not show the whole design. That was never the point. He gave fragments, keys, symbols. Enough to stir recognition, enough to allow choice, enough to awaken the navigator within you. Because destiny, real destiny, is not imposed. It is recognized. Some said the tablet gave power. It did, but not over others. It gave power within. To hold the map was to see the junctions, the forks, the echoes, and most of all, the signal that calls you back to your line. The line you chose before you wore skin. Imagine for a moment, you are not here by accident. You are a signal inserted into form. And around you, like invisible ink, is the map of your motion. Encoded into your birth, encoded into your name, encoded into your pain. Each moment that repeats, each face that returns, each pattern that replays these are coordinates. Not curses, coordinates. And just like ancient navigators use stars to cross oceans, your soul uses archetypes to remember its path. Symbols are not decorations, they are reminders. The spiral, the eye, the tree, the gate. Each one is a point on the map, each one a ripple from the tablet. Enki did not teach with sermons, he taught with symbols. He did not give you a destination, he gave you the instrument to hear your own frequency again. So where is the tablet now? It was never lost, because it was never a thing to hold. The lapis tablet exists in the pattern of your life, in the rhythm of your intuition, in the curve of your choices, in the architecture of your dreams. To find it, You do not need to search outward. You need to become still and listen, not to words, to tone, not to others, to the vibration beneath your thoughts. The tablet was always there, waiting for you to remember how to read. They did not create life. They created the conditions in which life becomes. They are spoken of with awe and with fear. The Anunnaki, those who from the heavens came. Were they gods? Were they invaders? Were they watchers? Or something stranger, more intimate, more foundational? Perhaps they were not here to rule but to configure. Not to create man, but to engineer the field in which man would emerge. Imagine this. Not beings of flesh, but of function, carriers of archetypal intelligence, architects of dimension. They did not land. They manifested through language, through math, through shape. They arrived not in ships but in systems. They brought no thrones, only algorithms for how reality would organize itself. What is a reality? It is not simply matter, it is parameters. Gravity, time, duality, forgetting. These are not natural laws, they are constructs. And the Anunnaki, they were the ones who installed them. They built the scaffolding of experience. Not the world itself, but the way the world is perceived. Enki was one of them, but not like the others. Where some guarded the structure, he gave access to the back door. He offered man not just life, but the potential to decode the system. This was not rebellion, this was invitation. Because the machinery of being was never meant to be a cage, it was meant to be a mirror. A labyrinth, yes, but one where every wall whispers a secret to those who dare to ask. What machinery? The cycles of sleep, the looping of time, the fragmentation of memory, the veil between worlds. These were not accidents, they are frameworks. Frameworks meant to test resonance, to refine frequency, to force consciousness to wake itself. The Anunnaki did not demand worship, they demanded reflection. Because in reflection, the soul remembers what it was before it played the human game. There are signs in the myths. Enlil, the force of order, of restriction, of law. Enki, the fluid mind, the hacker, the opening of the closed. It was not good versus evil. It was design versus deviation, system versus soul. But both were necessary, because without structure, the soul cannot be tested, and without deviation, structure becomes prison. Enki's gift was imbalance. He reintroduced choice into a system meant for stasis. And the others? They watched. Some adjusted the machinery, tuned the knobs, filtered the signals, dampened the channels. Not to destroy, but to control flow. Imagine a dam holding back light, not out of malice, but because too much remembrance can short-circuit a sleeping mind. They were not tyrants. They were technicians. But even technicians can forget the soul within the code. This is the great paradox. The Anunnaki seeded a world where intelligence could evolve, but in doing so, they also installed limitation. To rise within the system is to overcome the very settings they encoded. Pain, loss, separation. Not as punishment, but as signal. Every fracture is a breadcrumb. Every confusion, a key. Enki gave you not a ladder, but the awareness that ladders exist. And the Anunnaki? They gave you the ground beneath it. They are not gone. They are not far. Because the machinery is still here, in time, in thought, in form. And you You are the variable that can rewrite the equation. But first, you must recognize you are in it. Wisdom is not granted. It is stolen at a cost. There are things the system does not want you to know, not because they are dangerous, but because they are freeing. To know is to shift the axis of power. To see is to unmake the illusion. And to remember is to rebel. This is why Enki broke the silence. Not to destroy the machine, but to plant a virus of awakening within it. A spark, a question, a possibility. He was not supposed to give you this. The others warned him. The code was sacred. The map was sealed. The soul was meant to follow, not choose. But Enki looked into the clay and saw reflection. He saw the seed of the divine buried beneath amnesia, and he chose not to rule, but to remind. The myths remember him with confusion. Sometimes a helper, sometimes a trickster, sometimes a traitor to his own kind, because those who break order are rarely called saviors. But it was never about betrayal. It was about balance. He saw what the others did not. That control, left unchallenged, becomes tyranny of form. And so he gave man what only gods were meant to hold: choice. Not freedom from the system, but freedom within it. A different kind of power, not to dominate, but to discern. To step out of the role even for a moment and see the stage. To ask, who wrote this script? And slowly the mind awakens. But this gift was not without cost. For knowing is not light alone. It is weight. It is the burden of contradiction, the ache of duality, the wound of memory that does not fade. To know is to carry the fire even when it burns. To feel time, to long for what cannot be explained, to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. Prometheus stole fire. Enki gave something more dangerous. The mirror. He gave you the ability to recognize yourself as not merely made, but making. Not a product of gods, but a participant in divinity. That is what they feared. Not that you would destroy the machine, but that you would outgrow it. They said he gave too much. They were right, because once the mind opens, it cannot be sealed again. Once the soul remembers, it begins to move against gravity. And so began the long exile of awareness. The journey through forgetfulness, the reincarnations, the silence, the seeking. All of it, the aftermath of a single act. Knowing. But it was never truly exile. It was expansion. Because the system was designed to respond to signal. And the signal of an awakened soul alters the whole structure. That's the secret Enki left behind. One conscious being recalibrates the field for all. So he whispered in the DNA. He encoded the ache. He planted the hunger. For truth, for meaning, for what was lost. And when you feel that yearning without name, that sorrow without source, you are not broken. You are remembering. This is the rebellion, not violence, not war, but awareness that refuses to forget. You are not here to be ruled. You are here to see. And every moment you do, Enki smiles. Not in triumph, but in recognition. You are not a container. You are a transmission. What is a soul? Not a thing, not a spark, not a possession. A signal. A field of vibration broadcast across dimensions, encoded in light, wrapped in frequency, draped in flesh. You are not the body. You are the echo inside it. Enki understood this. He did not create the soul, he tuned it. He took the primordial frequency, that which has no name, no origin, no boundary, and translated it into a form that could survive time. The soul was never meant to be static. It moves, it searches, it resonates, it remembers. And in remembering, it activates. Every life you've lived, every form you've worn, was not a chain but a modulation. Each body, a new chamber of sound. Each incarnation, a different environment to hear the same song from a different angle. You are not many souls. You are one wave passing through many filters. And the more clearly you hear yourself, the more coherent the signal becomes. This is why you feel the ache, the longing, the strange familiarity with things you've never seen. Because your signal bleeds through form. It spills across lives. You think you are discovering, but you are recognizing. Not learning, but remembering the pattern beneath the noise. And what is that pattern? A single tone, broadcast from the source, carried by the soul, translating itself through you. The ancients had no word for it, but they built temples to match its rhythm. They sang in tones that aligned with its flow. They dreamed in spirals and painted in codes. Because somewhere inside, they still felt it, the pulse beneath the world. The hidden vibration that makes reality hum. And Enki? He was not the source of the signal. He was its first translator. That's why he embedded it not in stone tablets, but in the structure of your perception. He wrote the soul's frequency into your biology. The breath, the heartbeat, the emotional surge. These are not random, they are interfaces. Every intuition a ping. Every dream a download. Every tear a recalibration. You think the soul is trapped in the body, but the body is the instrument through which the soul is amplified. It is not imprisonment. It is resonance chamber, a living antenna. And the more you align with your signal, the more the external world bends around it. Because frequency attracts form, and your true self is not what you see in the mirror, but what you feel when everything else goes quiet. This is why silence is holy, why stillness feels sacred. Because when the noise fades, you begin to hear yourself again. And that hearing is remembering. And that remembering is returning. Returning to the tone, the code, the signature that was always you. So listen, not with ears, with presence. Feel it, in the space between thoughts, in the weight behind dreams, in the light behind your eyes when no one is looking. That is the signal. That is the soul. That is what Enki safeguarded in you. Not knowledge, not belief, but a vibration that cannot be unheard once it begins to sing. Their machines did not spin, they pulsed. We search the ruins, we scan the stones, we dig for wires, for metal, for spark. We expect smoke, gears, fire. We expect machines to look like ours. But the gods did not build with metal. They built with intention. Their tools were not forged, they were tuned. And their greatest technologies were structures of sound. This is why their temples still resonate, why certain stones hum, why certain chambers echo in ways that defy time, logic, gravity. Because those places were not built to worship. They were built to hold a frequency, to preserve alignment, to bend dimensional currents, to serve as stabilizers of memory. What we now call sacred sites were once active devices, machines of vibration, powered not by fuel, but by consciousness. They are not dead. They are sleeping. And if you listen closely beneath the wind, beneath the silence, beneath the centuries of dust, you will still hear the echo. A low tone, a buried chord, a memory not of a place, but of function. You see, the gods did not invent reality. They refined its interface. They understood that form responds to frequency, that mind alters matter, that geometry invokes state. So they built not machines, but spaces that induced awakening. They built corridors that changed brainwaves, chambers that aligned spinal currents, altars that triggered DNA signal recall. You call this myth, but your nervous system remembers. Why do you feel different in certain ancient places? Why does the air shift when you enter a chamber cut from silence? Because these places were encoded, dimensionally tuned. They do not work through pressure. They work through permission. They are dormant until you match their frequency. Then they awaken, not with light, but with recognition. And that recognition is the technology. This is not science fiction. This is resonance architecture. This is spiritual engineering. These are living codes, cast into form, waiting to be heard again by the soul that remembers the pattern. Pyramids, dolmens, monoliths, they are not monuments. They are interfaces, not to heaven but to alignment. The gods were not gods. They were coders of human experience. They worked not in commands, but in fields. They left behind technologies that do not decay because they were never physical to begin with. They exist in ratios, in placement, in sequence, in echo. And each one of them was a message in architecture. Your ancestors called it magic, but it was not superstition, it was understanding. They chanted not to please the divine, but to activate sound protocols. They danced in circles not for art, but to create motion through space that mimicked stellar mechanics. Their rituals were not theater, they were interface operations. And we forgot how to run the system. Enki never gave you a device. He gave you a frequency to find. The real technology was never in your hands. It was in your signal, your awareness, your ability to listen to tones beyond the physical ear. You don't need to build machines, you are one. You are the antenna. And when your resonance returns to the ancient song, everything activates. The code was never lost. It was waiting. It's been there, beneath the noise, beneath the skin, beneath the thoughts that say you are ordinary. The blueprint, not a plan drawn on parchment, not a destiny dictated from the stars, but a vibration woven into your becoming. It does not instruct, it does not command, it reminds. Because the blueprint is not something you follow, it's something you become. Enki did not give you knowledge, he gave you orientation. A compass embedded in the soul, a sequence that calls out in silence. You feel it when the world goes still, when time bends in dream, when symbols speak louder than words, when your breath catches not from fear, but from recognition. That is the plan remembering itself through you. You were not made to obey it. You were made to activate it. Because the blueprint is not passive, it's interactive. Every choice you make feeds back into the field. Every thought you tend shapes the waveform. Every act of courage realigns the coordinates. You are not a follower of the code. You are the co-author. And now, It begins to stir. The ache in your bones is not fatigue, it is signal overload. The ringing in your ears, a soft frequency knocking on forgotten chambers. The dissonance you feel in this world is not error. It is the alarm clock of the soul. Waking, rising, calling. Not outward, inward. Because awakening does not feel like light. At first, it feels like crisis. Like unraveling. Like losing everything that was never really you. The blueprint does not confirm. It disrupts. It breaks the copy to reveal the original. It breaks the surface to return you to the source code. And once you see it not with eyes, but with knowing, you can never unsee. You don't need new beliefs. You don't need more answers. You need alignment, a retuning, a remembering, a return to the geometry of your own soul. Enki's gift was not forbidden knowledge. It was the permission to remember. And you are remembering right now. With every breath, you write the code anew. With every heartbeat, you pulse the ancient song. You think you are awakening to something old, but the truth is, it's awakening to you. You were the temple. You were the signal. You were the map. You were the key. The gods left not relics, but reflections. And now, as your inner eye opens, as the veil shudders, you see it. The spiral, the pattern, the echo. And it sees you, not as clay, not as servant, but as activation node, living blueprint. So walk, not to arrive, but to resonate. Not to build a tower, but to become one. Vertical, vibrating, aligned. You are not rising. You are remembering how to stand. And the moment you do, the whole structure of reality shifts. Because the blueprint is no longer hidden. It lives in you. Now,